Good evening, everybody. We are with the people of God. You got quiet when you were supposed to get quiet. Look at the symmetry of the room and how you're sitting. We're with holy people tonight. Thank you for being here for a discussion that I believe is incredibly important and incredibly relevant to our day. A few housekeeping items as we get started tonight. First of all, we are monitoring the weather. So relax, we're monitoring in the back, we're looking at radars, and if you need to know anything, we'll let you know. But I think we're good. Looked like the weather was supposed to come through about 10 or 11 tonight. So be at ease about that. I do want you to know that tonight is being live streamed. So welcome to our online guests tonight. But for those of you who are in-house, we just wanted you to know that anything you say in terms of a question will be before the world in the realm of internet. So we are live streaming this. Be aware of that. Should you need a restroom, the easiest one for you would be out the doors to my right and just down the hallway. You can find the restrooms there. Tonight is brought to you by Second Baptist Church, whom I represent, and we welcome you on behalf of the whole church tonight. It's also co-sponsored by a ministry partner of ours, which is Great Rivers Fellowship. Second Baptist Church is a cooperative Baptist fellowship church, and in our part of the country, there aren't many of us. A couple of years ago, the state entities of Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi in CBF Life merged to form the Great Rivers Fellowship. And they are helping us sponsor this event. One of the co-directors of the Great Rivers Fellowship is here with us tonight, Shane McNary. Shane, thanks for helping us pull this off. Will you come greet everyone and tell us who you are and what you do?
Thank you, Pastor. I am Shane McNary. On behalf of Great Rivers Fellowship and my co-coordinator, Brittany Caldwell, we do bring you greetings, and we are thrilled to be able to help sponsor this event. It is of great interest of CBF-type Baptists and Great Rivers Fellowship to have the message of our trusted partner, Baptist Joint Committee, share this as well. As we share who we are as Great Rivers Fellowship, and Preston's already mentioned cooperative Baptist, often that gets a raised eyebrow from folks because those words don't often go together. But indeed, that's who we are. A group of freedom-loving people who understand that following God requires us to not only seek our own freedom, but to seek the freedom of others in their quest to follow where God is leading them. And in that quest to expand the freedom of reading scriptures for ourselves and our churches having the freedom of operating under their own leadership and really as individuals to understand the freedom that we have to follow God. Can you imagine the mess that is when all you have is freedom? But even more, could you imagine the mess it would be if we didn't? As Cooperative Baptist Fellowship, CBF is the denominational waters in which Second Baptist Church swims. And the churches of Great Rivers Fellowship, which extend all the way across from Meridian, Mississippi, up to Fayetteville, from over at Shreveport to Jonesboro. We are a diverse community. Churches of various sizes and commitments and emphases, just like you would expect of folks who freely are able to follow God as God leads. So tonight as we gather together to hear about a topic which I've been very passionate about since I first came to know Jesus, I hope that you all will hear the message that's shared and will take it back to your congregation. Take it back into your life, into your family. Hear what's being said because we're in dangerous waters now. And I won't say any more. But I will ask that you join me in prayer. Holy God, our Creator and Sustainer, we thank you for this day. We thank you that you woke us up this morning and brought us together into this place. We ask God for a word from you tonight through your messenger, and that as Amanda stands to share with us what BJC is doing to address Christian nationalism and the perversion of the gospel that represents, that you will remind us that you are God of all creation, God of every nation, and that as we seek to follow you, we will understand that as passionate as we may be and as patriotic as we love to be, this is not our home. And so on our journey with you, towards you, be with us tonight. As we've already heard the threat of bad weather and the storm clouds on the horizon, may what we hear tonight help us weather the storm. In the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
You are about to hear tonight from the executive director of the Baptist Joint Committee, and I'll tell you who they are in a bit. But one of the things the Baptist Joint Committee does every year is host an essay contest for youth on matters of religious liberty. And we could not let this night go by without bragging on one of our own youth. We had a youth from this church write an essay on the relationship between the banning of books and religious liberty. Have you ever thought about that? I've thought about a lot of things, but I don't think I'd ever connected those realities until I heard about this essay. So, Sam Sproles is a member of our youth group here at Second Baptist Church. He's a junior at East Stem High School, and he wrote an essay on Christian nationalism or religious liberty and the banning of books. Sam, we're very proud of you, and we wanted you to bring a word tonight to everyone who's here and maybe speak about why you did that. Will you come forward? Will y'all share in our pride and welcome Sam tonight?
So, as Preston said, I'm Sam Sproles, and I wrote the essay for the Baptist Joint Committee. I think it's important that we address Christian nationalism because a quarter of Christians in our a quarter of the people in our country aren't Christians, so we shouldn't force them to live under Christian values. And many Christian nationalists go against goals that our church has been working towards. They've been reversing what we've done to help groups.
Great. Should you want to read Sam's essay, and I will say that it's worth your reading, we have 30 copies, or we did anyway, on the table in the back. If this interests you, I would encourage you to pick one up on your way out tonight. Sam, we're very proud of you, and tonight was in no way stacking the deck that you might win the competition on the essays. That's not what this is about, mostly. This might come as a surprise to you, but in the early days of this country, religious liberty had no better friend than Baptists. Can I say that again? It takes a minute. In the early days of this country, religious liberty had no better friend than Baptists. For one reason, it was woven into the way the Baptist tradition viewed the Christian faith and how it should be lived in the world, that it could not be coerced. The moment you begin coercing things, it's something other than faith. But also, it probably helped Baptists that we were a religious minority in the early days of this country. you begin to see how important religious liberty really is when you are a religious minority. Because then your voice doesn't carry the day in and of itself. So, in the beginning, Baptists were champions of religious liberty, even influencing how the Constitution of this country was worded. Over the course of time, that conviction has been eroded. Maybe because Baptists moved from a peripheral expression of the Christian faith in this country to more front and center, especially in the South. And the passion for religious liberty can wane when you're sitting front and center in the culture. Most of the time when I hear people talk about religious liberty, what they're really talking about is religious liberty for me. Not religious liberty for thee. But can I suggest to you tonight that if it's religious liberty for me and not for thee, it's not religious liberty we're talking about. It's religious privilege. And that's what most people are advocating for in this country today, if they're advocating for it at all. As Shane just insinuated, there's a storminess that is dwelling in my spirit right now when I look around and see and hear what we're seeing in the public discourse, what is moving towards the center in our political dialogue. And that storminess feels something like the air feels outside tonight. But we often say at Second Baptist we're a different kind of Baptist church. And that is true for a lot of reasons, but one of those reasons is we have remained passionate about religious liberty for all people. And that is woven in how we seek to practice our faith in this place. Because of that, the Baptist Joint Committee has been in our missions budget for years and years and years and years and years and years. And we've partnered with them in numerous ways along the way, in mutual and synergistic partnerships. I consider the Baptist Joint Committee a keystone organization in the movement to oppose Christian nationalism, and I know of no better spokesperson in that opposition than Amanda Tyler. Amanda is the executive director of the Baptist Joint Committee for Religious Liberty, or BJC, and she leads that organization as it upholds historic Baptist principles of religious liberty, namely what you see in the First Amendment, which is defending the free exercise of religion and protecting against the establishment of religion by the government. She is the lead organizer of the BJC's Christians Against Christian Nationalism campaign and is the co-host of BJC's Respecting Religion podcast. She is the author of How to End Christian Nationalism, which can be purchased, it can be pre-ordered now. It's about to be published by Broadleaf Books on October 22nd of this year. So go ahead and pre-order that now. Amanda has shown up on major news outlets, including the New York Times, Washington Post, CBS News, ABC News, CNN, MSNBC, and Religion News Service named her one of 2022's rising stars in religion. She's a member of the Texas and U.S. Supreme Court Bar. She has experience working in Congress, in a private legal practice, and served as a law clerk for a federal judge. She testified before Congress in 2023 on the threat of Christian nationalism to all of our religious liberty. And her 2022 testimony before Congress discussed the ways that Christian nationalism provides cover for white supremacy in this country. In 2018, she appeared before a U.S. Senate committee to testify about the threats of religious liberty here and around the world. She's originally from Austin, Texas, grew up Baptist, breathing the air of religious liberty and separation of church and state. And so when she went to Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., she began volunteering in the office of the Baptist Joint Committee. After graduating from Georgetown, she enrolled in the University of Texas School of Law, where she received her JD with honors And in 2019, that school named her their Outstanding Young Alumnus. Tyler was named Executive Director of the Baptist Joint Committee in 2016 and began her tenure in January of 2017. I know of no wiser or more faithful voice in why and how Christians of good faith should oppose Christian nationalism than Amanda Tyler. And Amanda, we're more than honored to have you with us tonight, so come and speak. Will you help me welcome Amanda Tyler?
Well, thank you, Preston, for that incredible and humbling introduction. And thank you, Shane, for reminding us all about the best of being Baptist with that single word of freedom. And thank you, Sam, for entering the BJC contest. And I have nothing to do with the judging of the contest. But if I did, I would give this church the winning award for supporting youth and in the way that you are learning about and carrying on the Baptist tradition of religious liberty. So thank you. I can't wait to tell my team about the fruits that the essay contest can bear in the life of the church around the country. So I'm delighted to be with you all tonight. I will have a slideshow here, and there will be some QR codes throughout the presentation. If you don't know what a QR code is, you can just take out your phone, point the camera to the code, a website will pop up and you can go to it. And if you'd like to practice right now, this QR code will take you just to a simple form to let me know that you're here. And it's a way for me to stay in touch with you and to send you continuing information about what I talk about here tonight. Preston and Shane gave a great introduction of the work of the BJC, but if you're learning about us for the first time tonight, we are an 88-year-old advocacy and education organization headquartered on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. We are a coalition of different Baptist denominational bodies, churches, and individuals of all faiths and none who collaborate together on this mission of faith freedom for all, believing that religious freedom can only flourish when government stays neutral when it comes to religion and allows every person of faith to pursue their faith in ways that do not interfere with the rights and freedoms of others. And we do our work by filing briefs at the U.S. Supreme Court, by advocating before Congress, by speaking around the country, and holding other kinds of educational events like these. And you may be asking, especially if you're not as familiar with Baptists, why are Baptists so interested in religious freedom? And it really comes, on the next slide, we'll see that it really comes from this Baptist theological conviction that of soul freedom, that in order to pursue our faith and our in full flourishing and our relationship with God, that every person must have the ability to practice their religion without the interference of government. And that we protect the faith, the religious freedom of atheists as strongly as we do of our own, because our yes to God means nothing if we can't also say no to God. That freedom is only, religion is only free if it's freely chosen. And this has been a long line of Baptists who come before us, all the way from the founders of the Baptist movement, including Thomas Helwys, who actually gave his life for this cause by advocating for religious freedom, to King James I, to Roger Williams, who is himself an early victim of Christian nationalism when he was banished from the Massachusetts Bay Colony, and then, of course, all the way up to more modern times, including Dr. Martin Luther King, who gave these very powerful words, that the church must be reminded that it is not the master or the servant of the state, but the conscience of the state. And Dr. King is really speaking to that healthiest relationship between religion and government, and that is a separation of the institutions of church and state. That's the arrangement that's protected by the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment and many state constitutional and statutory provisions. That arrangement is good for our pluralistic society. It speaks to this truth and this promise that one's belonging in American society should never depend on how we worship or what we believe or how we identify religiously. It's also good for religious institutions like this one. It gives us the necessary freedoms to follow the dictates of our religion in ways that don't impose on the rights and freedoms of others without unnecessary state involvement. But opposing this truth and this promise throughout American history has been this competing ideology of Christian nationalism. And so that led BJC, now almost 5 years ago, to start this initiative that we call Christians Against Christian Nationalism. Because I believe that Christian nationalism is the single biggest threat to religious freedom in the United States today. We had this sense 5 years ago because of how violent Christian nationalism was becoming, and particularly in houses of worship. I think about Mother Emanuel AME Church, the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, and the Tree of Life synagogue shooting, where people were all threatened and many people killed in and around their houses of worship by white supremacists who were armed not just with weapons, but also this ideology of Christian nationalism. And so we gathered with our interfaith colleagues around our table on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., and we said, we really think we need to do something concentrated on calling out Christian nationalism and providing tools for people who want to work to dismantle it. And it was our interfaith colleagues, our Jewish and Muslim and Sikh friends, who said, we agree, and we think you Christians are the ones who have to do it. This is primarily your problem. It is also something that you can call out with the kind of clarity and authenticity about how Christian nationalism is a departure from Christianity in the way that we can't. And then finally, and most devastatingly, they said, we simply do not feel safe in this country in calling out Christian nationalism with the kind of force that it needs to be called out. And so it was with that mandate that we named the campaign Christians Against Christian Nationalism. And on the next slide, it shows what our first goal with Christians Against Christian Nationalism was. We wanted to help answer this question: what is Christian nationalism and how do we recognize it? Because in the words of James Baldwin, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed unless it is faced. And we thought, first of all, we need to name and understand what is at work that is driving this hatred, this violence, this division, and these attacks on religious freedom. And so as we begin tonight, I'm going to offer some definitions that I think offer some helpful framing for the conversation. The first definition on the next slide is for religious nationalism. And the definition I'd offer is this: it's a fusion of national and religious identities and goals, and it's a recurrent problem throughout history and around the world today. This is an old problem. For Christian nationalism, I would suggest that the first instance was really with Constantine, the first time that an earthly ruler took the power of religion and put the power of the state behind it and used it to divide and to subjugate people who did not agree with that particular religious view. And we can look around the world today and see far too many examples of religious nationalism. I think about Russia, India, Hungary, a number of African countries, including Zambia, Nigeria, and Ethiopia. And we can also see religious nationalism present in the incredibly complicated and horrific violence that's happening right now in Gaza in the war between Israel and Hamas. And so with that larger frame of religious nationalism, For the bulk of the rest of the talk, I want to zero back in and think about American Christian nationalism as part of this larger problem. And so at Christians Against Christian Nationalism, we define Christian nationalism this way. It's a political ideology and a cultural framework that seeks to merge American and Christian identities. Christian nationalism says that to be a real American, one has to be a Christian, and not just any kind of Christian, but a white Christian who holds fundamentalist religious beliefs that often overlap with certain conservative political positions. There are several markers of Christian nationalism. One is this heavy reliance on a mythological history of America as a quote-unquote Christian nation. Now, I'm not talking about America as a Christian nation in a descriptive or a demographic sense. It is true that throughout history, a majority of American citizens have said that they identify as Christian. Now, whether or not they actually go to church and have other markers of Christian practice is another question. Church attendance in the early days of the United States was incredibly low, by the way. But people at least identified as Christian at that point in time. But that's not what people often mean when they say America's a Christian nation. Rather, they are suggesting that America was created by Christians in order to favor and privilege Christianity in law and policy. Some people say that the founding documents were divinely inspired, or that these Christian leaders wanted to put Christian values, or sometimes Judeo-Christian values in their language, into law and policy. But the problem with this mythological history is that the actual history doesn't match that very well. And it's not just, we could go anecdote for anecdote about which founding framer said this and which one said that. But I think the best way to contradict and to debate this history is actually to go to the constitutional text itself. So if a group of people wanted to create a Christian nation, you would expect Christian or Christianity to be in their founding document. It's not in the Constitution. Maybe God would be in the Constitution, not in the Constitution. The only place that religion or religious is in the Constitution is in Article 6, which prohibits religious tests for public office. And so I say, if these founding framers were trying to create a Christian nation, then they did it in about the most ineffective way they possibly could, by prohibiting religious tests from the very beginning. And that's because they weren't trying to create a Christian nation. They were instead trying to create a government that would remain neutral when it comes to religion in order to allow all kinds of religious practice to flourish. Now, it is true that at the beginning, the vast majority of people were practicing or identifying as Christian. They were not, I do not think they could have envisioned the kind of religious pluralism that we have now. But even that, as that may be, there were a lot of differences between those different religious sects at the time. And they were protecting all of them and their freedom in that new country. Another marker of Christian nationalism is it's an exaggerated form of American exceptionalism. It says essentially that God loves America best. And this, of course, contradicts our theology. And to be a little cute about it, John 3:16 says, "For God so loved the world." It does not say, "For God so loved the United States." But Christian nationalism tells a different story. It says that God has a special and unique role for the United States in God's plan. And that just is against one of our core, that's against the whole theological idea of Christianity as a global religion. On the next slide, I want to talk more about white Christian nationalism. So Christian nationalism often overlaps with and provides cover for white supremacy and racial subjugation. That's because the ideology creates and perpetuates a sense of cultural belonging that's limited to the people who held power at the beginning of the country. If If one believes that God had a special role for the United States, that God divinely inspired the Constitution, then you can't pick and choose which parts of that Constitution make up God divinely inspired. We have to reckon with the inequality, the brutality of early America. And you can't pick and choose which one of those had God's divine favor. And so therefore, you're saying that God, if God created this whole system of the United States, then God also blesses the stealing of native land, the enslavement of people, and everything else. And I just don't believe that God would have ordained any of that work. And so that is one of the problems of Christian nationalism. And when people continue to say America is a Christian nation, it is often code for white supremacy as well. And we can look to history and to the example of the KKK as an example of Christian nationalism with its toxic blend of violence and Christian nationalism and white supremacy, and the violence that had on so many people. We sometimes think of the KKK as a fringe movement, but in the early 20th century, it was a mainstream movement that so many Americans belonged to. On the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about how prevalent is Christian nationalism in the culture today. So Christian nationalism is an old ideology. I've taken us all the way back to Constantine, but also here back to the doctrine of discovery. But as a term, it is relatively new. And in the last 5 to 6 years, social scientists have been studying and measuring for Christian nationalism in the culture. When they measure, they do not ask survey respondents, are you a Christian nationalist? Check yes or no. That's not a reliable way to test for Christian nationalism. Instead, they ask questions like these that parallel a lot of those markers for Christian nationalism that I identified earlier. So they'll ask Americans whether they agree and how much they agree with statements like these, that the federal government should declare the United States a Christian nation, that the success of the United States is part of God's plan, that the federal government should advocate Christian values. And then depending on how much they agree or disagree with those statements, they place the respondents on a scale. So this slide shows the results of, in a book called Taking America Back for God, Christian Nationalism in the United States. It was published in 2020 by Andrew Whitehead and Samuel Perry. A few things to note about these responses. One is you'll see that Christian nationalism has several orientations, or it's a scale. It's not a diagnosis. It's not something that you either have or you don't. Rather, it's an ideology that we all have the opportunity to embrace or reject at any point in time. And so this particular survey is a snapshot in time of the people who responded to the survey. And in this survey, the smallest group of people are the ambassadors of Christian nationalism. Those are the people who strongly agreed with those comments at the beginning. You'll see there was also a slightly larger group that strongly disagreed. Those are rejectors of Christian nationalism. But that the vast majority of people, here about 60%, are somewhere in the middle. And I think this shows kind of how pervasive a problem, how deeply seated a problem Christian nationalism is. It's in all of our communities, all of our religious spaces. It's something that we all have to grapple with. It's not something that's just a fringe issue, but rather this cultural framework, this ideology that to be a true American, one has to be a Christian, is actually a pretty widespread idea. These same results were borne out earlier this year on a much newer survey that was put out on the next slide from PRRI and the Brookings Institution. What's interesting, they asked very similar questions to the Whitehead and Perry group, and they had very similar responses. One very encouraging thing is they had a much smaller group that were those who were most embracing of Christian nationalism. 10% were adherents, 30% were rejectors, but still about 60% are somewhere in the middle. So we still have kind of the same general makeup, although I do find it encouraging that more people are rejecting it than they were 5 years ago, and much fewer people are embracing it as well. You might be wondering, where is Christian nationalism most flourishing? Well, for the first time in this PRRI poll, they studied it in all 50 states. And these numbers are really small, so you're going to have a hard time. But you might notice that Arkansas is pretty dark blue on here. This is not a political party blue. This is how much are you embracing of Christian nationalism. And Arkansas was one of the highest numbers here. It was 49% of the population, again, who participated in their survey, were either adherents or sympathizers with Christian nationalism. Those on the top end, which is quite a few more than in the overall survey. So I'm probably telling you something that you already know, and that is that there is a lot of Christian nationalism in the communities in which you all are circulating. So I'm really pleased that you're here tonight to learn more about Christian nationalism. But if you look at the map, Christian nationalism is everywhere. Even I think the smallest number state, I need to look at it more closely, maybe it's California, and it had 19% are either adherents or sympathizers with Christian nationalism. So there are people who are embracing Christian nationalism everywhere. It is not just a regional problem. It is not just a white problem. It's in every religious and ethnic and racial group. So it is something that we can all work on. Okay, I want to talk now about what Christian nationalism is not. And I want to talk about Christian nationalism on the one hand and Christianity on the other. Christian nationalism, again, tries to merge American and Christian identities. And in doing so, it can lead us to confuse political authority with religious authority. And the problem with that, or one of the problems with that, is that can very quickly lead to idolatry. If we are confusing our religious and political authorities, then we can very quickly learn to elevate the political authority over the religious authority in ways that have us worshiping our country or our citizenship in ways that distract us from our call to love Jesus, to love God, and to love our neighbors as ourselves. And we can also think about how Christian nationalism takes the central message of Christianity, which is a gospel of love, and turns it into this false idol of power. And we can look to the person of Jesus to see what a gross distortion Christian nationalism is from the teachings of Jesus. Jesus, who was always on the side of the oppressed and the marginalized and those who were being pushed out by those in power, would want nothing to do with Christian nationalism, which takes Jesus as a mascot for their pursuit of power at all costs. And just think about Jesus being the victim of a state execution. The fact that he was willing to give his life in order to speak truth to power to the state. That is not the model of Christian nationalism, which says that in order for Christianity to have currency in the public, that the state must impose it on other people. It takes everything about Jesus and turns it on its head. But Christian nationalism, you might be saying, it has Christian in the title, but that Christian is really more about identity, about an ethno-national identity, than it is about a particular religious view, a theological position. But it uses the language and the symbols of Christianity. And so to a casual observer, Christian nationalism looks a lot like Christianity. And here's the hard truth. It would be easy, and I wish I could just say, Christianity has nothing to do with Christian nationalism. But if it has been breeding for so long, if the church has been complicit at so many points in history at taking the teachings of Jesus and turning the gospel of love into a false idol of power, then how could it be that American Christianity hasn't been infected by Christian nationalism? It has. I mean, just look at the way that Baptists have come to be in this country. They're, the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship, most of those churches were at one point Southern Baptist churches. There is a Southern Baptist Convention because Baptists split over the cause of slavery. Those churches chose allegiance to their state, allegiance to the Confederacy, allegiance to the system of slavery over their theological convictions. They reinterpreted Scripture in order to justify slavery. And that's part of our tradition, whether we like it or not. And so part of dismantling Christian nationalism is really grappling with how Christian nationalism has infected our theologies, our worship practices, all of our spaces. If we don't really think and interrogate those questions, then we will not succeed in dismantling Christian nationalism. On the next slide, I want to talk about Christian nationalism on the one hand and patriotism on the other. So, I like definitions, so I'm going to give a definition for patriotism that's very simple. It's a love of country. And you can express a love of country in a number of different ways. They can be symbolic, like waving an American flag or saying the Pledge of Allegiance, or they can be active. They can be voting or helping other people to vote or exercising our First Amendment freedoms, including the freedom to protest. These are all ways to be patriotic. And one doesn't have to be patriotic. It's a choice. Love is never forced, right? So we can't force someone to love their country. And when we look at what this country has done, some of things really wonderful, some things very shameful. I can understand why not everyone loves the country. But many people do. And one can be a patriot, one can have patriotism without veering into Christian nationalism. And so a definition of nationalism is this: it's an allegiance to country that demands supremacy over all other allegiances, including to Jesus. There's no choice about whether you get to love your country in a system of nationalism. And so the question I often pose to people who say, well, what's wrong with loving my country? Why can't I love my country and love God? I said, absolutely nothing. But let me ask you, is your patriotism causing you to violate your religious convictions? If it is, then it's not patriotism, it's nationalism. And so I think we need to be very clear about the difference between the two. These terms are sometimes used interchangeably, but they're not. They're very different concepts. And I think we need to stand up for a freedom to choose to be patriotic and reject any form of nationalism, including Christian nationalism. So in juxtaposing Christian nationalism with other things, I want to talk about how Christian nationalism relates to faith-based advocacy. So the picture on the right is probably very familiar to everyone. It was taken on January 6, 2021, outside the US Capitol, where rioters eventually stormed the Capitol and tried to overthrow the results of the election, and ended in horrific violence. And what caught so many people's attention, including mine on that day, were how many symbols of Christianity were present in that riot, as here, this Jesus Saves signs, crosses, Bible verses, the prayer that was said in the Senate chamber by the insurrectionists who took over that chamber. But it wasn't just on that day. There was a whole series of events leading up to it in which Christian nationalism was used as the rallying cry to try to unite this disparate group of people into a common cause, taking their political cause and grievances and turning it into a religious cause as well. And that added religious fervor both justified in their minds the violence that they were taking, that they were doing it on God's behalf, and also intensified the violence. And I just don't believe that we will really understand what happened on January 6th if we don't interrogate and understand how Christian nationalism played a role. And Baptist Joint Committee worked with our friends at the Freedom From Religion Foundation in putting together a comprehensive report of all the ways that Christian nationalism was at work in driving the events of January 6th. And that's available on our website if you're interested in learning more. That's very different than the picture on the left, which was from January 6, 2023, when BJC helped organize a prayer vigil at dawn to both remember the events of January 6th, but also to draw attention to how Christian nationalism played a role there. One of the criticisms we sometimes get at the campaign is, well, by calling out Christian nationalism, you're just trying to push Christians out of the public square. Not at all. For one, I am a Christian in the public square, speaking out against Christian nationalism. But in our statement at Christians Against Christian Nationalism, we say, people of all faiths and none have the right and responsibility to engage constructively in the public square. I celebrate, I encourage, I want more people bringing all of their selves, including their faith and their religious perspectives, into public advocacy. But when we do that, we must not then try to impose our own religious views on everyone else. And so understanding where that line is nuanced, right? How do I say, my faith is inspiring me to advocate for fill-in-the-blank policy, but I'm doing this without imposing a particular religious perspective or particular religious doctrine on everyone else. Because, as Sam so eloquently said, 1/4 of the people in this country aren't Christian. And of the people who are Christian, we know the vast diversity of perspectives and difference among Christians. So to take one perspective and try to impose it on everyone else is an example of Christian nationalism. I talked earlier about how we have to interrogate Christian nationalism and how it impacts Christianity. So I encourage us to all look at how Christian nationalism shows up in our churches. Some churches have an American flag on the altar. I didn't look, but I kind of doubt that there's one here. This is always the most awkward part of my presentation because I don't look, and then I'm like, I'm saying this. And my point is not to say everyone must take down their American flag, because I'm a Baptist, and I'm not going to tell any other church what they need to be doing. I am suggesting that every church should have a conversation about it, because some of these vestiges of Christian nationalism have gone on for so long because we haven't stopped to ask the question. We haven't stopped to interrogate it. I know that most hymnals have patriotic songs in the back, and sometimes they're sung during the worship service. Why is that? What message is that sending? Who are we worshiping here? What unites us in this space? Again, stopping to ask the question and to see in what way have our worship practices, and then on a deeper level, our theologies and the way that we interpret Scripture, the way that we talk about what it means to be a Christian, how, if at all, do we see Christian nationalism showing up, and how can we have conversations about what that means in our ability to be faithful followers of Jesus? We can also see a lot of examples of Christian nationalism in our public schools. This is a picture, it could have been from any one of more than a dozen states that have passed laws in the last 5 years to require the posting of "In God We Trust" in public school classrooms. Now, you might say, "In God We Trust, that's a national motto. What's the problem with that?" We can have a whole nother conversation about the motto, but the effort to require the posting of it in the public schools is definitely an effort to further Christian nationalism. Because the group that has pushed that, which is called the Congressional Prayer Caucus Foundation, has said in their pamphlet that goes along with the model legislation, the reason we're doing this is to instruct our young people in what it means to be an American. And they can't understand what it means to be an American if they don't understand Judeo-Christian values, right? And so that's signaling, again, this merger of American and Christian identities that's being pushed on our most impressionable young citizens in the public schools. This is just one of a number of examples, which I list on the next slide, of how Christian nationalism is showing up in public education policy disputes. We see the pushing of a teaching of a Christian nation mythology in place of a more honest account of history. Anytime we see Judeo-Christian values in legislative text, that is a red flag that there's probably a Christian nationalist agenda behind that particular piece of legislation. We see it through the posting of In God We Trust or the Ten Commandments in public school classrooms. There was a legislative effort in Texas that didn't pass. I can't say failed because they just ran out of time in the legislative session to post the Ten Commandments, but Louisiana did just pass that law. So if it hasn't been filed here yet, it probably will be soon. We see it in Bible elective bills, Don't Say Gay bills, book bans, as we talked about earlier, and this new effort to encourage school districts to hire school chaplains in place of school counselors. I don't believe that effort has been filed yet here in Arkansas, but it has been in 12 other states. And Texas and Florida were the first to pass that legislation. So we see that there are so many opportunities for us to stand against Christian nationalism when it comes to legislative action in our public schools. So I didn't come here just to scare everyone about Christian nationalism, but I want to end on a call to action in a sense of what can we do about it. And so one thing that you can do tonight, if you have not already done, is join our growing network and movement of Christians Against Christian Nationalism. We have 38,000 Christians Against Christian Nationalism all across the country. You can add your name to this statement. That gets you on our list. And then from there, we are engaging and helping people find the next steps of action that they can take, particularly in their local community. One thing that we've discerned over the last 5 years of working on this campaign is that Christian nationalism, we have some pretty obvious examples of it on the federal level, but that those examples are often rhetoric. I'm not saying rhetoric's not important, but there's not a lot that we can do about rhetoric, right? Except calling it out for being hateful and divisive. But what we can do is get involved on the local level. So most things that are happening that you all can have something to stand against Christian nationalism are happening on the state or even more on the local level, whether it be at the school board or the city council or in your neighborhood. And so what we have tried to do with the campaign over the last 5 years is really shift resources and think how best can we equip local communities. We have started this with our first ever field organizer that's working in a coalition in North Texas in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And she started in December, and so she has started to assemble our local coalition. We are doing a lot of learning through our work there, and then simultaneously working to try to equip local leaders who want to work as volunteers, and we can help equip with resources and training to do the same kind of coalition building in their local area. So if you're interested in doing that kind of work, I would love to talk more with you about how we might start doing some organizing against Christian nationalism or join with other efforts that are already happening here and bring some of these resources to bear. I think it's critical because we both understand better how Christian nationalism is impacting our local communities by learning from local communities, but we can also fashion better responses and interventions at the local level. And that's really how this work is going to be done. Another thing you can do, and thank you for talking about this earlier, is you can pre-order my book, How to End Christian Nationalism, which is coming out in October 22nd. And I'm doing this, I'm letting you know about this because this book I wrote to be a tool for organizing. I wrote it for everyone, but my particular audience is white Christians who want to do the hard work of dismantling Christian nationalism in multi-faith, multi-religious, multi-ethnic, and multiracial coalitions without perpetuating white supremacy in the process. And I know that this church has been so much about this work of racial justice and this work of fighting Christian nationalism. And my hope is that this book will be a helpful resource, not just, again, diagnosing a problem, but actually providing steps on how best to address the issue. And then my last slide is back just to let me, if you didn't have a chance earlier, let me know that you're here. And I'd love to take any questions that the audience has. Thank you.
We do have several minutes for questions. We're still good on weather, right? I would ask you to come to one of the two mics to pose your questions so that we can both hear it in-house and our online guests can hear it as well. Any questions in the house? Okay, I'll start. I think when we use the phrase separation of church and state, some people hear separation of faith from public arena. Can you differentiate those two? And can you differentiate those two?
Yeah, absolutely. So I often say, because of that confusion, I often say the separation of the institutions of church and state, or even better, the separation of the institutions of religion and government. Because a helpful way to also think about it is the state shouldn't try to do the job of the church, and the church shouldn't try to do the job of the state. That as far as realms, they have different purposes. And so that's why having the government stay neutral when it comes to religion, not picking sides, not denigrating or propping up religion or any of its forms, is the healthiest relationship between the two. But that has never meant a divorcement of religion from public life, of religious people from public service. We've seen that throughout our history of different ways that people of faith have brought their faith to bear in public service, including serving in public office. You know, think about Senator Warnock, right, who is bivocational. He is a senator and he pastors the church in Atlanta. And so we've got, examples right now of people of faith who are also serving in government. Now, I believe that it is incumbent on those political leaders to understand those different roles. When Senator Warnock is at the Capitol, he is not Reverend Dr. Warnock preaching to his congregation. He is there to serve all of his constituents, regardless of religion, whereas when he is in his church, he is tending to his flock at his church. And in doing, it takes maybe some extra care of a person of faith who's serving in public life to ensure that his or her actions, the way that they talk about religion, it does not send the signal of exclusion or of inequality based on religion. But I think that's an incredibly important thing to clear up, and often it's a red herring in an argument, and so to kind of put that aside and to say, no, I support faith in public life, I just don't support the government trying to do the job of the church.
Hi, Amanda. Thank you for being here. My name is Mark Hidlong. A lot of what you said rings very true for this area of the country, right? Whenever we hear Christian nationalism, a lot of times that's my cousin on Facebook, that's my uncle on Facebook, that's my aunt, yada, yada, yada. People who are very close to us. We are called to speak out against it. A lot of times it's very difficult to do and come across from a point of humility and love. I'm not going to ask if you have similar issues with family on Facebook because we live in a world where every opinion has a platform, right? What are the strategies you use to speak out with love and be that ambassador of peace that Christ was and that we're called to be?
Yeah, great question. And I do talk about this and in How to End Christian Nationalism and talking about taking on Christian nationalism close to home. because that's sometimes the hardest place that we are called to do this work. And so I've learned quite a bit from others in this larger body of work, this larger movement, including Dr. Pamela Cooper White, who's written a book called The Psychology of Christian Nationalism. And so she asks us to ask when we feel called to be involved in conversation with someone, she asks that we pause and ask ourselves 3 questions. Am I the right person? Is this the right time? And is this the right place? And the am I the right person is, am I in ongoing relationship with this person? Or is this someone that I went to high school with however many years ago that was, and I'm just really getting aggravated by what they're posting on Facebook? But if I'm in an ongoing relationship, if I have built trust with this person, then I may be the right person. Now, is it the right time? Do we have the time and space, or are we already kind of engaged in some other, conflict that's going to distract from this? Is this the first time I've talked to them in a long time? Do I need to kind of rebuild that relationship first? And is it the right place? I would posit that a social media platform is probably never the right place to try to have the conversation, but somewhere where you can actually be in conversation. And then once there, then I suggest approaching those conversations with a genuine sense of curiosity. Not entering in, trying to change someone's mind or thinking that we already know all the arguments they're going to make, but really listen. And when we really listen to someone with genuine curiosity, we will learn something. And we will also often learn what pain, what fear, what anxiety is behind some of these ideas. Once we are there in that posture of curiosity, then we can bring our empathy to bear. What must it be like to be in this person's shoes? And how is Christian nationalism somehow soothing, somehow giving a sense of belonging? And then how can I help create an alternate sense of belonging that is a more healthy response to that? But then throughout, entering with humility. And I think doing the work of interrogating how Christian nationalism has impacted our own lives, our own communities, our own theologies can really help there. And so then being able to share stories like, I used to think this, but then I had this friend, or I read this book, or I learned this piece, just having different pieces where you can enter with a sense of humility and also an openness to being changed in some way. I don't mean being convinced by Christian nationalism, but somehow softening or rethinking a piece or having a more nuanced view of what this ideology is and how it's taking hold. But I think entering into these conversations, we can't go in thinking we're trying to have an argument, we're trying to change someone's mind. We also need to be sure that we're not equating Christian nationalism with just the bucket of political views that we find abhorrent in some way, but rather be really thinking about, is this Christian nationalism because it merges American and Christian identities? If we think about it as that frame and not trying to fit it into every political position we disagree with, I think that's also more helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
It's very tall, I heard a preacher not too many weeks ago talk about the USA American Bible.
Oh, yeah.
And he called it blasphemous and idolatrous. And I hope more people are doing that because it's a wonderful example of what you're talking about here.
Yeah. So I admit I haven't seen the whole clip, but that clip went viral, if you all saw, of a preacher with a very different oratory style, maybe than Preston, just yelling, and so you're maybe expecting that he's going to have a certain view, but he is yelling about this Trump Bible, basically. This Bible that Trump endorsed. It's the only Bible endorsed by Trump, which, at BJC, we said, we don't think the Bible needs anyone's endorsement, let alone this person's endorsement. But to see how, and that the Bible, it's not just endorsed, but it kind of weaves in. This is like the most textbook example of Christian nationalism I can think of, just weaving in American history with the biblical text in ways that try to support this idea of God's providence being on the United States. And so that is encouraging to see more religious leaders from across the theological spectrum, across the ideological spectrum, using their pulpits to preach against Christian nationalism.
I don't think he called it Christian nationalism.
That's okay. That's okay. We don't have to use the words to be getting at the ideology. Yeah.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Sarah. So I saw that we are a deep blue state with a different definition, and there's a couple of things that I've seen locally that I would love to know how to respond to. One is the kind of aggression that is going into school districts and making school districts not only partisan, but there's also this very Christian nationalist, and it's hard for me to be empathetic because it feels like there's like a meanness there. And so when you're advocating, I'm wondering, how do we advocate? The other is the example that you used of these kind of cut and paste bills. Like as you were talking about things, I was like, oh, well, if Florida did it, Arkansas's next. So how do we advocate in a way that might not be the same way we talk to our aunt or cousin or loved one?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, because in those advocacy situations, you are trying to make an argument, you are trying to change someone's mind. But I think that bringing your faith to bear in those spaces is really important, because they have often heard the only way to be a Christian is to support this policy, right? That because we are Christians, we need school chaplains in public schools. And it's really powerful for someone to say, stand up and say, I'm a Baptist, and to protect my religious freedom, I trust my family and my church, and the school has no part in the religious upbringing of my children, right? And I feel the same for every child in this public school district. And then to have not just you, but 20 different people standing up with a similar message, but one that comes from them, is really powerful. And so it takes out the power of this is the Christian position, right? Because otherwise, and this is how dangerous Christian nationalism is they create this straw man that to oppose their policy is to oppose Christianity. And then you become a pariah. You can't be elected, right? And so that's how these In God We Trust bills got passed. They were passed with large bipartisan majorities in all these states because they were put out because, well, how could you vote? You're unpatriotic and you're against God. Like, what's wrong with posting In God We Trust, right? So they create these situations. And so to have that voice of faith speaking out at the school board is so important. Also, I think, and this is something that our local coalition in Texas is actively discerning where our work is, but one of the places we've looked at is really insisting on nonpartisan school boards, because we've seen how partisan groups have come in and taken over local school boards when those entities have always meant to be nonpartisan and serving all children, right? And so how can we get more engaged in that work in particular? And then, yes, I think following along there, BJC in particular is tracking the school chaplain bills, and so we will definitely, I was pleased to know that there hasn't been an effort in Arkansas, and I think the legislative session is ending soon, so maybe that's a good sign for this year. But I do think that this is something to watch for, certainly in the future, and how this plays out. A hopeful note, though, on the school chaplain, our experience in Texas was the first state to pass this law. It was passed last legislative session, 2023. It took effect on September 1st. And last summer, BJC, working with some other groups, we organized a letter that was to be signed by chaplains, by professional licensed chaplains, because the Texas school chaplain law, there's no requirement on who can be a chaplain. anyone who can pass a criminal background check is a chaplain. And there is also no requirement that they have any training to work with children. There is no requirement that they not proselytize to children, and there is also no requirement of parental consent for the chaplains to meet with children. But there was a requirement that the local school board had to vote on whether or not they would adopt a school chaplain policy. And so we organized this letter of licensed chaplains, who more than 200 of them from different contexts. And they said, we are chaplains, we believe in chaplaincy, and this is not appropriate in a public school context. And here are all the reasons why. And we sent that to all 1,200 school districts in Texas. And the vast majority of school districts that actually voted said no to expanding a school chaplain program. And so that's really encouraging that this really bad policy can be passed, but on the local level rejected. And I do think that that was in large part to this advocacy, both by chaplains and other people who showed up at their school boards or registered their opposition to the policy.
Do you think that poverty has influenced Christian nationalism in the South? And if so, how?
Yeah, I do. And I think it's really important that we think about how economic inequality in this country is driving all other kinds of inequality. And I think when I think about this also in how white supremacy and Christian nationalism overlap, I think the United States is a caste system. And in order for a caste system to perpetuate, there always has to be someone below you on the caste system. And Christian nationalism creates a sense of belonging for people who otherwise don't have a lot of resources, whether that be economic resources or family resources, who are having so many other difficulties. This ethno-national identity of I belong because I'm white and because I'm Christian, whatever that means, right? Because I claim that label, that provides a sense of security that they are not getting from anywhere else. And so when I think about how we're going to dismantle Christian nationalism, we have to get at all forms of inequality. Because as we're not dismantling Christian nationalism just to dismantle Christian nationalism, we are doing it in order to have a more just and liberative society that we're building towards. And that would include everyone having enough.
One more question tonight.
Sorry, that was like the perfect cue-in to my question. So, with the very nature of the colonization and the expansion of our country initially being founded like under the flag of spreading Christianity, but always under the fist and the sword of Christian supremacy, how do you deal with the felt power loss of these people through the loss of supremacy if Christian nationalism is diffused? Like, how do you deal with that in the conversations and even as in the organization? That is it's a large emotional loss for people to deal with, and it creates defensiveness. And I'm just kind of curious on your thoughts on how to deal with that.
Yeah. Well, the words of my friend Dr. Jamar Tisby are coming to mind here, because he has said, and I think he's quoting someone else, and I'm going to miss it exactly, but for those who have been privileged, equality feels like oppression. And if we can get in touch with that feeling and empathize with that feeling, we don't have to validate that, right? But if we can empathize with it, then I think we approach the conversation in a way that may be more productive. And then when we talk about what equality looks like, it gets back to the previous question. When we have such rampant economic inequality, nearly everyone, is oppressed in some way, right? In their current system. And so how do we think about a more fair, just, liberative society in which we want to live, so that it's not a zero-sum game, that in order for someone else to have something, I have to lose something, that there is enough. And I think that our theology of an abundance, an abundant love, can really come into play as we think to create something that has never existed. I think that's a point I'd like to end on here, is as we dream together about what a world without Christian nationalism looks like, we're dreaming about a world that's never existed. And that's why this is so hard, right? But that is just a vision and a hope and something that I want to be a part of. And I can tell from you all being here tonight that you all want to be a part of that too. And so I think approaching that with empathy and understanding, and then working to how to change unjust systems to really make a difference is the work that we're about.
Can we thank Amanda one more time for her presence? The BJC should be on your radar. When I don't know a take on legislation, y'all were ready to go. Now you sit back down. They do excellent work across states, at the federal level. A few years ago, there was RFRA, Religious Freedom Restoration Act legislation in Arkansas, that went by the same name that had been accomplished at a federal level, which at that level it was pretty just legislation. But at the state level, it was being proposed under the same exact terminology as utterly different legislation. And I was having a hard time navigating that, and the BJC really helped me and many other people in Little Rock discern the difference between those two. So keep the BJC on your radar. Even if you're not Baptist, keep the Baptist Joint Committee on your radar. Tomorrow, we're having something we do every month, our second Thursday lunch here at Second, in which we talk about something that has to do with the common good, the public good, through the lens of our faith, in many of the ways that we've talked about tonight. We provide lunch, and tomorrow Amanda and I will be talking about separation of church and state, and in particular how that works in an election year. We only have a certain number of lunches because you have to RSVP. We may have enough food for you if you're not on the list. You may have to go get lunch afterwards. I'm not sure. But come if you're interested. We would love to have you, and listen to Amanda talk about church state, especially in an election season. Also, tomorrow night, Tim Alberta is speaking at CALS, Central Arkansas Library System. Tim Alberta is the author of The Kingdom, the Power, and the Glory. I'm halfway through it right now. It's a powerful testimony of how the religious right and Christian nationalism have danced together for about half a century now in this country. So it's a bad week for Christian nationalism in Little Rock, and Tim Alberta is worth your time to hear as well. I think that the real issue about Christian nationalism is that it seeks to do with power what it is unwilling to do with love. Because love is really hard work, and love takes time, and love takes faith, and love takes hope. So maybe the greatest antidote to Christian nationalism is love. As you go from this place tonight, go and love God with all that you are, all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And love your neighbor as yourself. Even someone of a different faith, your neighbor of a different faith. Love them as yourself. Do it as if it's the most important thing in all the world, because it is. Peace be with you as you go. Thanks again for being here tonight. Be safe and weather aware tonight.